This week, a family was destroyed by domestic violence. A husband killed his wife, and then himself and their children were at home. You may have seen it in the news, and you may have seen tons of opinions about it online. And truthfully, I'm not here to add to the speculation because I don't know the family. I didn't treat them, and I really don't want to narrate their worst day. However, I am a licensed couples therapist and an ordained minister. I sit with couples in crisis every week. And this tragedy has brought something to the surface that I think every couple needs to understand. What happens when an emotional pain goes unmanaged for so long that conflict stops being painful and starts becoming dangerous? I want to be clear from the start that most couples who fight are not headed toward violence, not even close. But there is a line between painful and dangerous. And I think we owe it to every family navigating conflict right now to talk about where that line is. In my work with couples, I see patterns. Every couple has one. It's a cycle of emotional reactions that feed on each other during conflict. And I want to walk you through briefly how it works because once you see it, you can't really unsee it. It starts with an action. Something happens. There's a comment, a tone, a decision, a perceived rejection. Something lands. That action triggers an alarm. One person's nervous system reads that action as a threat. Not a physical threat, but a relational one. I don't matter to you. You're leaving me. I feel alone or rejected. The body then goes on alert. The alarm produces a reaction. The person responds. They might pursue. They might complain. They might get defensive. They might press harder. They might get louder. And they might even get a little angry, demanding a response. Or they might withdraw, shut down, go silent, disappear into themselves. Or both people might escalate even at the same time. Here's what most people don't realize. The reaction then leads to the next action because it triggers an alarm in the other person. That alarm produces another reaction by that person, but this time it's louder, hotter, and often more intense. Action, alarm. Reaction, alarm. Escalating reaction, alarm. Escalating reaction. Each pass through the cycle is hotter than the last. Both people trying to protect themselves and their emotional health. Both people accidentally confirming the other person's deepest fear, and the temperature keeps rising. In most couples, this cycle is painful, but it's not dangerous. At some point, somebody walks away, somebody cools down, and the temperature starts to drop. You repair, or sometimes you don't. And when you don't, the distance grows between the two of you. But the cycle stays in the emotional space. It hurts and it damages trust, but it doesn't threaten physical safety. In some situations, though, the cycle doesn't cool down. The alarm never turns off, the reactions keep on escalating. And this past week reminded us of what that can look like at its absolute worst. There are factors that can push a painful cycle toward a dangerous one, and I want to name them. Not to scare you, but to educate you, because awareness is the first line of protection. The first factor is unmanaged mental health. When someone is in psychological crisis and they are not receiving consistent professional care, their capacity to regulate emotionally shrinks. Their window of tolerance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Things that would normally cause some frustration now cause rage. Things that would normally cause sadness now cause despair. And the cycle that might have resulted in a slam door before can escalate to something unthinkable. So, that first factor again is unmanaged mental health. The second factor, substance use as self medication. When someone is using alcohol or drugs to manage emotional pain, they're not managing it, they're just numbing it. And numbing it doesn't resolve anything, it actually just stores it. And the pain then comes back louder every time the substance wears off. And the person's judgment, their impulse control, and the ability to think clearly deteriorates over time. The third factor is loss of identity and control. When someone's career collapses, when their reputation is destroyed, when they lose custody of their children, when they're ordered out of their own home, when it feels like they're losing everything, that's not just stress. For some people, that's an existential crisis. They don't know who they are anymore. And when a person loses their sense of identity, they can become unpredictable because the internal structure that used to regulate their behavior has collapsed. Factor number four, the fourth factor, isolation. When someone withdraws from family, from friends, from accountability, when they stop letting people in, the feedback loop disappears. There's nobody left to say, hey, you need some help. There's nobody left to see the warning signs, and the cycle then runs unchecked, hidden in the dark. When you combine unmanaged mental health, substance abuse, identity collapse, and isolation, the cycle doesn't just hurt anymore, it becomes dangerous. Not always, not even usually, but the risk then increases dramatically. Now, I want to say something important because when tragedies like this happen, the conversation often centers on the person who caused the harm. What went wrong in their life and what were they going through and what drove them to this point? And those questions do matter clinically. We need to understand the patterns in order to prevent them. But we cannot talk about this without honoring the people who are lost. In too many of these situations, the victim has done everything right. They've recognized the danger. They've documented what was happening. They went through the legal system. They filed for protection. They tried to create safety for themselves and their children, and they did exactly what every expert tells them to do. And it still wasn't enough. That should concern all of us. Not just as therapists or as ministers, but concern all of us as human beings. Because the truth is, sometimes people do everything right and the system still fails. The legal system moves slowly. The mental health system is underfunded. Protective orders, while valuable, are pieces of paper. And the person in crisis doesn't always get the intervention that they need before it's too late. Every victim of domestic violence deserved better. Their children deserved better. And every person who's in a dangerous situation right now, doing what the experts say to do and hoping the system works fast enough, They deserve better also. Now, let me speak directly to couples watching this. If you know the story I'm talking about, or if you've seen similar stories in the news, and unfortunately there have been too many of them, this may frighten you, especially if you're in a relationship right now where conflict has become a regular part of your life. So I want to say this clearly. If you and your spouse fight, even if you fight a lot, that does not mean that you are heading toward this. The vast majority of couples in conflict are not in danger. You're in pain, and that's a little bit different. But I do want you to be aware of the warning signs, not just in your partner, but also in yourself. Because this is not just about protecting yourself from someone else. Sometimes we need to recognize when our own pain has become more than we can manage alone, especially if we're managing with substance abuse or something else to numb our pain instead of paying attention to it, especially if we're not going to get care and care for our mental health. If anger is escalating in frequency or intensity, and it's getting harder to calm down after conflict, that's a real signal to get help. Not next month, get it now. If substances are becoming the way you manage the pain of your relationship, whether it's alcohol, medication, or anything else, that's your nervous system saying you can't carry this alone. If you stop talking to anybody about what's happening in your home, if the conflict has become a secret, that isolation's not protecting your relationship, it's protecting the cycle. And if you're afraid, if anger is moved from words to threats, from threats to objects, from objects to physical contact, you're not in a conflict cycle anymore. You're in a danger cycle. And you need to talk to someone who can help you to create a safety plan. Not a couples therapist, not even a pastor, a professional who specializes in domestic violence safety. And I want to be clear about that because that distinction truly matters. Couples therapy is for couples who are both safe enough to be in a room together and work on the relationship. When safety is gone, the first priority is not the relationship, it's protection and safety for both involved. I want to close by speaking to one more group of people: pastors, clinicians, friends, family members, anyone who sits with people in crisis. We have a responsibility to know the difference between pain and danger. And sometimes we get that wrong. Sometimes a pastor can tell a couple to pray harder when one of them actually needs a safety plan. Sometimes a therapist may focus on communication skills when one partner is escalating beyond what communication can address. Sometimes a family member sees the warning signs and they say nothing because they don't want to interfere in the relationship. We can do better. We have to do better. If you're a person who works with couples, as a therapist, a pastor, a mentor, a friend, learn the warning signs of escalation and know when to refer to domestic violence resources. Know the difference between a fight and a pattern of danger. And don't be afraid to name what you see, even when it's uncomfortable. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do is not hold space for someone's pain. It's to say this situation has moved beyond pain and into danger. You need help that I can't provide, and I'm not going to pretend I can do this otherwise. Family was destroyed this week. Children lost their parents. And a community is trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. And so I just want to ask us to pray. Pray for the children who will carry this for the rest of their lives. Pray for the families on both sides who are holding grief and questions that may not ever be answered. Pray for the friends in the community that's carrying this weight right now. And pray for every family that is navigating conflict behind closed doors. Because somewhere right now, someone is in pain and doesn't know where to turn. And the systems that are supposed to help don't always move fast enough. I don't have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I don't have most of the answers, but I do know this. The pattern that ends in tragedy almost always has warning signs before it gets there. And the more we understand those signs in ourselves, in the people we love, in the people we counsel, the better chance we have of intervening before it's too late. If you or someone you know is in a relationship that has moved from painful to dangerous, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. You can also text the word START to 88788. Help is available. You don't have to figure this out alone. If this video helped you see something more clearly, share it with someone who needs it and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and hold your loved ones a little more tight tonight. Take care.